Welcome back, card counting enthusiasts. Today we're going to be diving into a fundamental yet often misunderstood concept that separates the wannabe counters from the pros. That is the true count. You may already have a good grasp on the running count, but if you understand the true count, that is where you're going to take the knowledge of card counting and be able to actually apply it to your game in both playing and betting decisions. Let's start by breaking down the basics, all right? The running count serves as our compass. It guides us through the shifting tides of the deck's composition with each card dealt. Before we get into the true count, we must have a firm grasp on the running count or none of this will work. All right, let me remind you that the running count keeps track of the ratio of high cards to low cards that are remaining in the deck. And to do this, we assign each card a value. Our cards 2 through 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are going to be our low cards. Those are going to be worth +1 as we count. Cards 7, 8, and 9 are neutrals. That's going to be worth 0. And then the high cards, 10, Jack, Queen, King, and Ace, we're going to assign the value of a -1 for those. Okay, so most of you are pretty good at counting. I have a lot of videos on my channel on that already. But here's the twist that not all blackjack games are created equal. The true count takes into account the number of decks remaining in the shoe, providing us with a more accurate measure of our advantage. To calculate the true count, we must divide the running count by the number of decks left in the shoe. Let's put this theory into practice with an example, all right? Imagine that our running count is pretty high, let's say +10, all right? Just to prove it to you, if you want, you can pause the video and count to make sure that it is a +10 here, okay? Now, that sounds pretty good, but if you remember that the true count, the way we find that is by dividing our running count by the number of decks remaining. If we are playing a 6-deck game, let's say one deck has been played here, then that +10 is going to be divided by 5 decks left to be played. That only gives us 10 divided by 5. That only gives us a true count of +2. So suddenly that picture isn't as rosy, reminding us to tread cautiously in our betting strategy. However, that same +10 looks a lot better when there's only 2 decks remaining. So let's say that I have a little card here to help me out. If I were to take these cards, let's say we're all the way through playing with these, and a lot of times what we do to check our true count is we look at our discard tray. Okay, here I can tell that there is exactly 4 decks that have been played, which means if this is a 6-deck shoe, there are 2 decks that have yet to be played. And it doesn't even matter where the cut card is. Some people get a little bit caught up on that, but we take into account all the rest of the cards that are in the shoe remaining, okay? So that's why you only have to pay attention to the discard tray. You can train your eye. I have videos on how to do that. How much is remaining, that's gonna be the amount of decks that are left in the shoe. Okay, so that same +10, if there are 2 decks remaining, now 10 divided by 2 is a +5, which means we could bet even more. It's going to be a lot more than when there was just 1 deck played and it was 10 divided by 5 decks remaining earlier. Now I about gave it away there, but you might be wondering, why does this true count thing matter? Why can't I just learn the running count? Well, my friends, it's the key that unlocks the door to strategic betting mastery. Armed with this knowledge, we can tailor our betting strategy to maximize profits and minimize losses. The whole idea of card counting is to bet as little as possible when the casino has a favorable count, and to bet increasingly more the higher the count gets as we gain the advantage. In recent videos, I've discussed how I personally use a 1 to 10 bet spread when I go play. All right, what I do is I bet 1 spot of $25 at any true count that is 0 or lower. Okay, and once the count gets to 1 or higher, I start betting more and more. Okay, at a true 1, I don't just bet 1 spot of 25, I bet 2 spots of 25. All right, there's little tricks that you can do to kind of help yourself out a little bit, and there's tons and tons of different betting strategies, and bet spreads is what we call those. All right, what I like to do is, again, at a true 1, I'm still betting 1 chip, 1 green chip. All right, you can do this with $5 tables as well, things that might help you, you know, to kind of help keep that in mind. I like to correlate this with my true count. For example, I max this out at a true 5. So I'm going to be betting 2 spots of 5 green chips. Right? At a true 5, I'm betting 5 green chips here and 5 green chips there. So that's why I call this a 1 to 10 bet spread. If you were to count these up, well, 5 green, that's $125. This is also another 125. Together, that is 250. So my minimum bet, $25. That's my 1, and then I multiply that times 10 to get that 250 mark at my max bet. Okay, at that count of +5, you can go higher if you want, but that's about where you probably want to stop at a true 5 or true 6. That's probably where you want to cap your bets. So again, we usually gain the advantage around a true 1, so that's why I start to bet more there. Now, not every game is the same. Some it's a little bit more, some it's a little bit less than a true 1. And of course, at 0 and negative, anything less than that, you want to bet the table minimum or your minimum bet, whatever your bet spread is allowing for, so that you don't kind of pay rent, if you will, at the table during those negative counts. So let's put this strategy to the test using my personal bet spread here. All right, I'm going to take these out of the discard tray because we're going to shift to be playing some double deck. All right, and I have this kind of set up for us. Let's say, I have another cut card to help us out here. Let's say that half a deck has been played. All right, that's going to go over here in the discard tray. And currently, let's say that the count, just to show you, is at a +3. If you want to count that out, you can. I think it's at a +3. Now, of course, that is our running count. All right. If you think that that half a deck has been played, that makes our true count going to be a, well, 3 divided by 1.5. That is a true count of 2. Therefore, using my bet spread, I would bet 2 units or 2 greens in 2 spots. All right, 2 green here and 2 green here. Let's play out the hands and see what happens. All right, in this first hand, we get a 17 versus a dealer's 4. Of course, basic strategy tells us that we have to stand on that. However, on the second hand, a 9 versus a dealer's 4, that is going to be a double down. All right, when I double, I get 19. Dealer, see what happens here, has 11 and 18. All right, so before I get excited about the win and, maybe grieve the loss, let's first update the running count and then the true count. That should always be happening first in your head. Remember, it was at a 3 when we started this hand. This would drop it to 2. All right, those 2 would cancel. This would bring it back to 3. Neutral, neutral, and this is a +1. So now we're at a 4. All right, so it is at a 4. Let me pay you out here. So we got a double down win, and then I think I have to take that one because remember, dealer had 18. All right, there's still probably just maybe right around half a deck still in the discard tray. All right, so we're gonna remember that here in a little bit. But here's where the plot thickens a little bit. All right, the true count not only guides our betting decisions like we just saw there, but also empowers us to make deviations from basic strategy. As you know, basic strategy is based off of hundreds of millions of computer simulated hands. We hit, we stand, we double down, we split based off of what is the most likely outcome over these millions and millions of hands. However, people way smarter than me realize that you can also, while you run these simulations, you can also kind of take a snapshot of what the true count was during those different hands and decide, is it better when the count is higher or lower to maybe deviate or change your decision based off of what the count was during those hands. In other words, we might not always do what basic strategy says because the count is really high, or we might also not do what basic strategy says because the count is really low. Let's take a look at this next example showing that. So if you remember that last scenario that we just had, we finished at a running count of +4, making our true count a +2, right? 4 divided by 1.5 decks left to be played. That's not quite enough for a true 3 yet, so we're still gonna be at a true 2. So for the sake of this one, let's just play one hand for simplicity's sake, right? What if I say that we are dealt a 12? Okay, a 12 versus a dealer's 2. First off, let's update the running count. It was at a +4, now it's at a +5, which means 5 divided by 1.5, well, now that is going to be a +3. And it turns out that this hand calls for a deviation. right? It is shown that when you have a 12 versus a dealer's 2 at a +3 or higher, it is mathematically advantageous to stand on this hand instead of hit. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to stand on this hand. Let's see what happens with the dealer. They have a 12 and then they bust. Okay, so again, you won a little bit of money there because of that deviation. In fact, that 12 versus a dealer's 2, that's part of what's called the illustrious 18, which are the most famous 18 deviations, or maybe what I should say is the most profitable 18 deviations. All right, I'm actually going to link to that at the end of this video. But before I do, let's take a look at one last example here. So brace yourselves as we embark on a journey where the stakes are high and the rewards are even greater. Picture that we have a high running count of +7, all right, after only one deck has been played. Again, I'll kind of fan these out for you so you can maybe pause the video and double check that it is a +7 indeed. Okay, but whether it is or not, we are going to be maxing out our bets at a true count of +5. So because there's just one deck remaining, right, playing double deck, that means that I am going to be max betting. That is the moment that I've been waiting for. And we're not playing our measly little bet spread from earlier. Here we're going to be playing some high stakes blackjack, right? You can see all my big chips over here. Let's say we're playing $100 for every true count from that is above a 1 all the way up to, like I said, a +5. So this is the moment we've been waiting for. We are max bets are out. We have $500 on the table. Watch what happens with this hand, okay? So let's say we have a humble pair of 4s here facing off against the dealer's formidable 6. Splitting is our only option, but it comes at a high cost, okay? And that cost is another $500 out there on the table. But along with that high cost comes a good chance, a very calculated risk that we're willing to take. And that is, we think we can win both of these hands. All right, let's see if we can. Right, on this first hand, we get a 9 versus a dealer 6. Of course, we're going to double down there. And again, this is $500, so we can just put a $500 chip out there. And on that double, we get an ace, which gives us a 20. All right, on the second 4, we get a 14. So we're going to stand on that. That is a pretty good hand. The dealer is likely to bust with their 6. All right, dealer has a 13 and they bust. All right, again, because our count was very high there, there are a lot, the deck you might say is rich in high cards. And so they are, again, likely to bust, whether it was a 7 king or a queen king, 10 king, whatever. Likely going to bust on that hand. And so because of that, let's pay you out. You get $500 there and $1,000 there. And that is why we raise our bets along with the true count, because we are likely to win. Now, I want to give you a word of warning as we end. A situation that too many card counters play incorrectly, and that is negative counts. Suppose that we are starting at a daunting -4. Many players play right on through these negative counts, betting the minimum amount until the count rises or a new shoe begins. But your expected value during any negative count is negative, right? This means that you are just throwing away your money, or what Colin from Blackjack Apprenticeship likes to say, you're paying rent at the table. I'd suggest that if the count is negative, you kind of push back from the table, maybe count your stack of chips, make some excuse not to play that hand, try to use the bathroom or something like that, go get a drink. Yet, maybe if you do push them back and you count your chips, all the while, you know, you are not missing a single card that comes out of the shoe. And that way, you can jump right back in as the count allows. Now, I will say that if you are playing double deck, most double deck games are what's called no mid-shoe entry, which means you can't come back in until after the shuffle. All right, if you are to play through all these negatives, I'd suggest 3 things. 1, you're going to need quite the bankroll to allow for these negative counts and definitely these negative swings in your winnings, right? Probably at least $30,000 or more. Okay, obviously the more the better. 2, you will probably be wanting to play heads up with the dealer. This makes the game go faster, and the rounds per hour that you will get will kind of make up that long run faster, and you'll get to that long run faster, which kind of makes up for some of those negatives. All right, and lastly, be sure that the deck penetration is very good. If any of those 3 things are not true, you probably do not want to be playing through those negative counts. You want to make up any excuse you can to leave the table or kind of push your chips back, like I said, and take a break while the suckers at the table play through those negative counts. However, despite dealing with the negatives, this battle rages on. But in the end, victory is ours, thanks to the astute betting strategy informed by the true count.